All right. So before the internet decided to, try to sabotage our greatness here, you mentioned
Communists.
some guy, he asked you a very direct question about Afghanistan, and you were,
Right. Yeah. A three-star general
yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. No, no. Yeah, the DoD civilian. And I gave him a very direct answer. And I pointed in the direction of Pakistan. I said, the enemy's over there. Because, yeah, this was after Anaconda. Because a lot of the Al Qaeda, Taliban, assorted bad guys had all made their way via the rat lines and the smuggling routes into Pakistan, where they were given pretty much carte blanche shelter protection, and still to this day, the Pakistanis love to deny that and everything like that. But I always compare Pakistan to a very drunk man, teetering on the edge of a cliff, and he's weeble wobbling, always towards the edge, and just before he's about to take that last final step and plunge off the cliff into the abyss, he manages to weeble wobble his way back, and then it's a continuing thing. I mean, my one tour in Pakistan was a very short tour, but it was I didn't need to be there long to. It's a country that doesn't need to exist. I mean, it's
well,
sorry. And I don't mean that in a violent way.
yeah,
It's just it's it's a country that's very unsure of who they are as a country.
right,
They're always comparing themselves to India, and everything is always through the India lens instead of just being proud to be Pakistan.
right.
It's also a very 1% country where the 1% rules the other 99%, and very, very tragic,
Yeah.
and not good for the overall stability. And instead of spending it on infrastructure and education, instead of madrasas and stuff,
Yep.
they spend it on let's produce a couple nuclear weapons every month.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's not a good. It's a recipe for ultimate disaster.
Which brings me to my last final point I wanted to get into, because honestly, Ron, and I don't, if you got nothing else going on, we can do this probably every 2 weeks, because I don't want to just go over everything that you have done. I think you have a lot of valuable insight on everything that's going on, and we didn't even get into any of that tonight. So I would love to have you back and kind of pick your brain on real world things, and there's a lot of other stuff I want to ask you based on what's going on right now.
Sure.
But the last thing I would love to ask you, based on what you just said, and also kind of knowing what your timeline was when you retired, what or how much involvement did you have in the final, the mission to go get Bin Laden? How was that?
Oh, I had nothing to do with that at all. I
Okay.
was at that time. I was the agent. I was the director's representative to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff's Pakistan-Afghanistan Coordination Cell,
Gotcha.
which it's a mouthful, typical
Yeah.
DoD, and it was actually a creation by Stan McChrystal when he was director of the Joint Staff.
Okay.
But it's a very flat organization headed by a two-star general, Army, with Afghan experience. Not necessarily as a general, but nevertheless. Um, a deputy is a Navy 06, a Navy SEAL, also combat experience. Chief of Staff is an Air Force 06. And then it's split about the other 45 or so other people are um, senior lieutenant colonels, senior majors from all the services, some other senior colonels that are now general officers. Randy George, who's what is he, I Corps or something like that now?
Hmm.
One Corps, whatever it is.
Yeah, one core.
Yeah, I Corps. Sorry, I'm traditionalist. I Corps. He was there as a he'd come from his brigade combat team command tour in Afghanistan, came there, and we worked together. But yeah, so the Bin Laden raid happened, and we were all. I mean, the chairman was the only guy that really knew. I mean, so the next morning I came in early, and the senior rep to the Pentagon to DOD. You know, he's a senior executive service, senior intelligence service officer. He gave me the whole 411, the whole data dump, as much as we had at the time, and so I had it. Obviously, I didn't need to go brief the chairman on because he'd been standing in the room, and yeah, so no big deal. But everybody else needed to know, and so I gave everybody, and that was an easy brief to give, you know, as opposed to one of the hard briefs I had to give. Um, yeah, so it was a lot of fun. You know, that was a great experience working at that level with the military, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Joint Staff itself, the and OSD, the Office of Secretary of Defense, the you know all the civilians that you know.
So, because I had lived through this before, like I said, with Saddam, and I was like, all right, let's go. We're all going home. And now here we go. We fast forward to 2011, and they get Bin Laden. What was your reaction when you found out? Did you think, all right, we're wrapping this up, or did you think, well,
No,
whatever, it's
not
just
at all. I mean, by this time, you know, the fight was always a multi-tiered fight with Afghanistan. I mean, originally it was, you know, going to get Al Qaeda,
Yep.
but the Taliban are in the way, and you know the so we to get to Al Qaeda we had to go through the Taliban, and while the Taliban were never the agency's primary mission in Afghanistan, obviously we had to support the military's efforts to
Yeah.
eradicate them or to take them out in order to get to Al Qaeda. You know, unfortunately, most of the Al Qaeda guys, except for the few ones that are stuck in Nuristan because they're afraid to cross the river into Pakistan. I'm joking. I don't know what, but but most of them they're not in Afghanistan anymore. They're in Pakistan or in Yemen or Niger or, you know, Hamburg. I don't know. I mean, hell, they're all over. So it's you know, it was a difficult target. But what I think the thing is you know, those early days after Anaconda is the you know, it sort of reminds me of the old thing where you know, the dog chases the bus and then latches onto the bumper of the bus as the bus is speeding down the highway.
Yeah.
And the dog says, well, I caught it. Now what do I do with it? So, you know, okay, so we sent guys in, you know, the whole, you know, SF guys on horseback, blah, 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 JDAMs, and,
Right
you
movie.
know, and, you know, from October to, you know, mid-December, bam, all of a sudden we're in Kabul. And great, we won the war. Okay,
Yeah.
well, all right, we got to go. Okay, March, Anaconda. Okay, now we've really won the war. Well, nobody quite knew, you know, like, can we disengage? And that, you know, we really missed an opportunity there to, excuse me, to not disengage, but to engage at a different, from a different aperture, from a different aspect,
Yeah.
instead of, you know, doing the full on, you know, things like that. Do the counterterrorist thing like they're proposing these days, and the training mission. And the training mission, oh, by the way, was probably the most fucked up thing I've ever seen in my life. We uh, we sent National Guard guys in, and I love the National Guard. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but you know,
I
they
well.
they were, you know, okay, so this year it's the, you know, whatever the brigade is from the state of Oregon,
Yeah.
and you know, they had the sunrise patch, and they're training, and they have this training philosophy, and so the Afghans are like, okay, great, 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 I'm learning. Guys, those guys rotate out. The next dudes come in from, I don't know, pick another state,
Yep.
and oh, everything you learned was wrong. We're going to do,
Well,
and it goes on like that every time. Instead of,
that was the same issue in Iraq from OIF 1 to OIF 2 when we
oh yeah,
transitioned from third ID to first AD to 101st. Like the 101st commander came in and was like, I don't give a fuck what you guys did before. Here's what we're going to do now. And then you
oh yeah,
burned every bridge with every relationship we built for the last year and a half.
yeah, oh yeah. It's same. You know, the agency guys. I mean, so I'd go. So we, when I was there for my 3 tours, had a certain capability that I brought to the fight with
Yep.
my team. And anyway, so we would go, and I remember flying up to Crit, where Fourth ID was, and it was Major General Odinero, and
Yep.
they
He's a
and they
big boy.
just
He's a
made
big
the
boy.
and they just made the beautiful HLZ landing zone by the division headquarters in the shape of the the four
Fourth
leaf
clover.
clover diamond,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
It's very
And
Iraq and third eye, or very Kuwait and third eye, or
yeah, very Fort Carson Garrison-ish. And I still remember we landed in our special helicopter, and we were getting out. I was going to a meeting, and this very overweight, self-important major comes out, and he comes. And he starts. You can't land here. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I go, well, there's no other place to land around here, and I got the clearances, and and he says, this is the general's personal HLZ. I go, well, you know, I guess here, you go and tell the general that I won't be attending his meeting because you won't let me land here, and we'll take off now. And he goes, what? And by this time, General Odinero's executive and aide come out there, and they, oh, great, you guys are here. Hey, OGA dude, go, da, da, da. And yeah. But the thing that amazed me was, so Odinero had one philosophy for his battle space there in Iraq. So then I would go over to the 82nd Airborne, and I can't remember the general's name right now because I also worked with him in Bosnia. Um, totally different philosophy on how to attack the thing.
Exactly.
And then I would get back to, and the chief of station would ask me and say, hey, so, I says, oh my God, there's no comprehensive overarching strategy on how to attack the nascent insurgency. And I mean, even Ray Charles can see the seams between these different, brigade combat teams. I mean, oh my God. I mean, it was, yeah.
I mean, but that's what I come back to. I said this to you. It's like we've been in Afghanistan for the amount of time that we could have fought World War II basically 5 times.
But we haven't needed to be in Afghanistan we should have left after maybe a couple of years, except for a training mission
Yeah.
and a counterterrorism presence, a
We're all
robust training
2008,
counterterrorism.
2009, give or take, because that's when I
No, I think we should have left end of 2005
why, but like, and
because
I'm not trying to get policy. I'm just trying to because I was never, I never, I don't have access to the stuff that you did, and I'm not asking you to say things that you can't. But why do you think this has gone on this long? I know my belief, but I'd rather have someone who probably has a little more, you know, back.
well, if you're looking for some deep reasoning and things like that, I can't give you that. I just think, literally, I go back to my dog and the bus thing. We just don't know how to say no, and
Yep.
now it becomes a matter of pride. Like, people are. I love the way the media says, well, we have this peace agreement with the Taliban.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a peace agreement. It's basically, allows us to withdraw, and but keep supporting the current government in Kabul.
Right.
I mean, again, I go back to my statement about history. When the Soviets, pulled out and they crossed the bridge there into what is now Uzbekistan from Afghanistan, and the end of the Soviet invasion, occupation, incursion into Afghanistan back in, what is it, 89 or
Yeah, 88.
88, whatever, something like that. But, the communist government in Kabul at the time stayed in power until the fall of the Soviet Union,
Okay.
because the Soviet Union kept sending them money. So my contention has always been that, we keep a training mission there, we keep the CT presence there, we keep the some level of funding, not the exorbitant amount that they've come to expect, and that we seem to give without even so much as a wink and a nod. That we do that, but yeah, it's just I mean, it's been great. But the other, but gosh, I mean, we could go on and on and on. I mean, there's
we could, but I mean, and this goes back to my time because we overlapped. I've said this before. I think you left Kabul in 2013.
I did. That was my I was actually out of the agency and I retired out of the agency in April of 2012 and out of federal service. And within a couple of months, a lieutenant general, a friend of mine, called me up, told me I needed to be on his staff at the ISAF Joint Command, which was the
Right.
operational command for ISAF there. And so I got out there in August, and I stayed to the end of his tour in April. So
April
of 2013, April 2013.
okay, because I got there in, oh man, maybe we did meet because I got there in August of 2013, and I
Yeah,
told you this before. We did all the IJC briefs with General Milley, and
right. Yeah.
yeah,
If I had to stay, Millie wanted me to stay, but I
yeah,
had
you
to
were
go
ready.
home.
38 years, man. At the time comes, you gotta go do something else. You
Yeah,
gotta.
Millie still hasn't forgiven me and still won't talk to me.
It'll buff out, Ron. I mean, he'll retire at some point and realize that you're all he's got. You know what I mean?
I
So
doubt it.
no, but I do. I do remember. And here's my issue, and I've gone on this before with my old account on Twitter when I've had 3,000 followers before I got rid of it. And when we went in 2013, we transitioned into Operation Drumbeat. And Operation Drumbeat was like, let's get all the rolling stock. And for those who don't know what rolling stock is, it's anything with a fucking wheel on it in Afghanistan. Let's get it out of the country because we're coming home.
Very expensive proposition too.
That was, and you know what blows my mind to this day is we actually had the contract with the Russians for their transport.
Yep, to get it up, to send it up to the Black Sea.
Because our biggest transport plane at the time was a C-5, still is. And, and from what was explained to me is we could put 8 MRAPs on a C-5, right? And those are all the things we're getting out. But the plane that we would contract from the Russians could hold 20 MRAPs.
Yeah, the AN-124 Condor.
Yes, and the best part about this is we could not have any American presence on that flight.
You're damn right. Those are the most unsafe airplanes ever.
Yeah. Oh my God. In theory, if they wanted to fly back to fucking Moscow, they could. And we couldn't do anything about it. And I just remember, this is 2013, 2014. And so Drumbeat came to an end. We left, transitioned, did our left seat, right seat, battle handoff. And I'm just like, all right, well, that was 6 years ago. What are we doing now? You know what I mean? And
still hanging out. Yeah, I
don't know, Ron. I really don't.
Well, the other thing is I've seen a lot of officers and civilians that the good idea fairy lives in them, and
he's very prevalent.
Yeah, and everybody has a better idea how to win the war. There's no overarching direction anywhere. I mean, when the administration changed from Bush to Obama, it was, I mean, suddenly the way we were fighting the war and the guidance on, how to not end the war, but how to, I'm not even sure we were looking at ending the war or anything. It changed considerably. So there was no, I mean, the whole thing was just fraught with silliness and ignorance. I mean, I go, God, again, I'm a history guy, so I go back to the whole thing when the Bonn Agreement back in 2001, early 2002, that installed Karzai as the president of Afghanistan.
Oh my God, that's a whole other rant for another day.
But I mean, again, here it is: the Western powers impose a Western solution without any rhyme or reason or understanding of Afghan culture or internal tribal politics. And like I said, I've been following it since the Russian invasion and even before that. So, we're all going like, I got it, Karzai, he's a Pushtun, but, that's like saying,
turned his back on us when he got into power.
Well, yeah, he was not the strong leader that everybody thought he was. And I mean, there actually was, he did try to do one thing. He enticed the former king of Afghanistan to return to Kabul from his exile, very comfortable exile in Rome.
That sounds
Well, that was when Afghanistan had its most peaceful and progressive in the right way of the proper positive way of that term,
Yeah,
progressive.
yeah.
Um, in the 60s and the early 70s was when it was a constitutional monarchy, and but the king very smartly declined to return to Afghanistan. Hey, thanks for the visit, Karzai. Going back to Rome, and he passed a few years later. But um, it was the only thing that kind of united all the disparate tribes and ethnic groups and power brokers and things like that. Which is why you're always seeing every time the Afghans form a new government, this balancing act between Abdullah and Dostum and the guy from Herat and the guys from Kandahar. And I mean, it's it
It hurts
makes
my head, Ron.
it does mine too. Makes me want to drink a whole bottle straight.
I,
No, I know you put it away.
so, because I don't want to ask you about this in the future. Because, like I said, I do want to. If you're up for it, I'd love to have you back on to just talk normal and not.
Hey, anytime, brother.
Yeah,
Anytime.
not go through everything. Because, like I said, you have an entire book that you need to write, and if you're not going to write it, I'll help you write it.
I'll write it. I'll write it. You
Okay.
and my wife, knock it off.
Yeah, yeah. Your wife's she sounds like a smart woman. But my last thing is to this, and it could be anecdotal or it could be substantial. But I also get that a lot of people in your position, they don't want to go through it. They don't want to deal with it. But have you ever thought of running for office at all?
Actually, I have thought of it, and I actually did.
Oh, you did? All right. Okay.
Oh yeah. So yeah, damn you. You
Yeah,
sure you're not an interrogator?
no.
So after I retired in April of 2012, or was it March? Anyways, not important. We had bought a place earlier, a year or so before, in Teton Valley, Idaho, which is the Idaho side of Jackson Hole.
Okay.
Very beautiful. The Tetons are right there. The house, the living room window was right there. The Tetons. I mean, it was a gorgeous one-story house and just just big enough and everything like. And Idaho, everybody likes to the group think is that it's a very conservative Republican place. Yeah, kind of, sort of, but it's not.
Right.
But anyways, so a bunch of the people in the local Republican Party there said, "Hey, Ron, we need you to run for county commissioner," because the the Democrats were pretty powerful in that county. Because a lot of people from California had moved up there and brought all their prejudice. They brought all their money and all their prejudices and all their.
It's weird. They vote the same thing. It doesn't matter. I don't get it. Okay.
Oh yeah, and so they wanted me to run. Unfortunately, I was running for a seat. The incumbent was a Republican, and he was a local boy, and he was like a fifth generation local family boy, with lots of. I mean, a lot of history. It was like Friday Night Lights and times 10 type of stuff. But he declined to step aside, even though I pointed out to him and to all the Republican intelligentsia in the county, which maybe not so much.
Yeah.
I said the issue isn't going to be roads. The issue isn't going to be the landfill or the new law enforcement building, the sheriff's office. The issue is going to be Sid, because Sid can't form a cognitive sentence, type. I mean, Sid's the issue. If we eliminate Sid, we eliminate all the issues, and then
Tell us what Sid is, though, real quick, Ron.
I'm sorry.
Tell us what Sid is for those who don't know.
Sid's the guy's name. That's his first name.
Okay.
Sorry,
we're going counterintelligence.
It is not an acronym. It is not an acronym. Yes,
okay, gotcha.
Senior Intelligent Dunce. Yeah, no, I mean, it's no, and because the Democrats had nominated a lady who her and her husband had defrauded the federal government on employee income tax, withholdings, and I mean, she blamed her husband. So but she wasn't that bright. And I think if we'd talked only on the issues, I could have. Anyways, needless to say, um, I had to compete against Sid in the primary, and I lost terribly, and and then to the general election, um, Sidney got terribly. I mean, they wiped the
He
floor.
got burnt. That's what we
Yeah,
just.
and that Democrat has been reelected again, even though her personal financial troubles and other
That
shenanigans
was in
are
Idaho at the time.
Idaho, yeah, Teton
And
Valley,
now you're
Idaho,
okay. Now you're in North Dakota.
South Dakota.
Well, no. So I wasn't even asking you like on behalf of. Look, Ron, I'm telling you, man, with your experience and everything, and I get it. You got to be willing to go through the gamut and all the shit that comes with it. But local excellence is not your it's not your place, man. We kind of need
Well,
at a slightly higher office.
well, I appreciate that, but even in South Dakota, the issues aren't national stuff. It's cattle futures and wheat
Right.
and
Which is
this and that.
why I feel like your experience lends itself to a slightly larger sight picture. Remember,
Well,
not,
thank you.
not sight picture.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, my front side post is right there, but yeah, it's I'm that's okay. I learned my lesson. I between the primary and the general election in Idaho, my truck got keyed. Um, I literally
What's this, high school? Your truck got
no, it
keyed.
was, yeah, it was um, I got basically I don't know, surrounded in the supermarket, the grocery store parking lot by a bunch of people who wanted to tell me what a complete a-hole I was. And I'm like,
You need gold core is what you need. That's what you need.
no, I just looked at them and just like whatever. But and also at community functions, Fourth of July picnics and things like
Yeah.
that, where you would be in the city park area, and I mean people would literally come up to me and try to intimidate me, and you know it was like you say, it was childish, but it was,
It is.
yeah, it was yeah.
So how is the South Dakota political climate?
Well, that's well, we're our governor is the only one who didn't close the state. She left that up to the individual cities and counties. So most closed for the initial 2 week period, and then they go, okay, well we've flattened the curve, and there's really not that much. I mean, South Dakota's not a very big population, and I mean the biggest outbreak was way on the eastern side of the state in Sioux Falls at the pork plant,
Right.
where
Okay. That makes sense.
which, yeah, I mean, what people don't tell you is that it's most of the workers there come from, I think they say they speak 80 different languages. So
80. 80?
80, yeah. So I mean that's what they keep telling me. So I'm not going to go find out, but it's
Name 80 languages. I stop at like 10. I don't know.
well, I mean, there's all sorts of everybody wants to bring over their favorite refugee group and things like that, but
Yeah.
and they always congregate to the cities because that's where they can get all
Where it's easiest.
the
Um,
exactly. But where I live in the Black Hills is very independent, very we're a little bit more self-sufficient,
yeah.
and and everybody looks out for one another and takes care of one another, and I mean, I go to the local VFW and have an occasional beer, and it's Deadwood, South Dakota. Okay, so there you go. So
How did you end up? What made you end up there? Because you're
oh
from Oregon, so
yeah, well, I can't go back to Oregon, Jesus. I mean,
yeah. Well, you can go
um,
to the
it,
southern part. It seems pretty like Bend.
it
Bend's
doesn't make any, yeah, it doesn't make any difference. It's all weird because
okay.
anyways,
So you
well,
want to be kind of
after
West
after
Coast, not
after the whole county commissioner race thing, we went full-time RVing for 3 years,
okay.
and we bought an RV, and we traveled the country,
Yeah.
and got saw all the places that the National Geographic Channel shows you, but
Right.
I wanted to see it real. We went up to Alaska, did the Yukon, went to the Arctic Circle, the Arctic Ocean, all that sort of stuff. So excuse me, total blast. I couldn't recommend it enough. Really, and the 2016 was interesting because we're going around traveling, and we're hearing the news about Clinton was ahead by just a ginormous amount of points, and we're looking around going, everywhere we travel, we see nothing but Trump signs and
Exactly. Very
and
true.
and Hillary for prison signs
Yeah.
and things like that. It was I
I was the same way on the East Coast, man. I was still in Florida at the time, and I was like, wait a minute, that's not true.
Yeah, and and I tried to tell this to a few of my compadres who are no longer my compadres and that were living back in DC, saying, "Hey, I'm just telling you anecdotally here that what
Yeah,
I see is there's wherever the polls are coming from, they're not coming from you know
yeah,
you know
America.
really
The city.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, we only saw 3 pro-Hillary signs in our entire travels during that election year. But as we traveled around, you're always kind of looking, would this be a good place to settle?
Yep.
And we're getting up there in years, and so we wanted to make sure we had decent health care opportunities for health care.
Okay.
My wife and I can go to the VA, so just outside of Sturgis, there's a great little VA hospital that is very, I mean, it's right sized for the right amount of population, and I
Yep.
mean, it has a large geographic area that it takes
That's
care of,
what
but
matters.
it takes good care. Um, we're living on a fixed income, pensions, and South Dakota has no state income tax, and the other taxes are very reasonable.
Mhm.
Cost of living is very reasonable. The climate is 4 seasons, although winter seems to be the longest
Yeah, I was
season
about to
around
say, I
there.
don't know, Ron. I don't know about 4 seasons, but
Oh, stop.
I'll give you. There's a winter for sure.
There's a winter, and then there's the 3 week break, and so yeah, no, and there's lots of outdoor recreation
Yeah,
opportunities here.
it does
So
look.
it's you know, and yeah, and the people are, like I said, decent, good stock, and it's. I mean, there's issues, there's problems, you know.
That's
We,
everywhere,
yeah,
right?
so but we seems to be dealing with, and the governor during this whole pandemic panic, really handled it well, and
Well,
so
I mean,
we were.
I felt the same way about Governor Newsom very early on. I felt he was doing a really good job. He was out in front. He was very responsive and accessible early on. Now, I mean, I don't pretend. I'm one of those people that I don't try to pretend that I know more than I know. So I'm not going to pretend I'm the governor and I have the access to his. But just based on what I see, I'm just like, are we
Well,
being
I see a
a
lot of.
little over precautionary?
Well, I see a lot of, even the so-called experts don't, are unwilling to admit they don't know, and so they err on the side of panic.
Imagine exactly, because imagine that. Like, imagine if you just said, "I don't know." No one wants to
Well,
say that because we don't know,
well,
right?
it's going to the VFW here in Deadwood. Um, People are coming from all over the country because South Dakota's open. All the other states are still in
Yeah.
whatever weird say. I mean, and people are coming in there and you don't have to wear a mask here, not unless you want to, and and they go, wow, how do you guys deal with this? I go, there's nothing to deal with. I mean, you know, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, well, what if you feel sick? Well, then I stay home. I don't go out.
Imagine
I
that.
mean, it's just like with
Like
the
normal.
cold and flu
Exactly.
season.
It's just like normal. Like you get
So
sick, you hang out at home until you feel better. It's
and
very.
but this virus, I go, yeah, well, this is how many viruses are out there. I mean, good Lord, people.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, and
Absolutely.
this one and everybody says, yeah, but you have so many positive cases. I go, everybody says there's a positive case. Does that make it a fatal case? Is that terminal, or is that just
Yeah,
woohoo?
people are very
You know,
surprised about the number of positive tests going up or test results going up when they're not acknowledging the fact that we're testing way more. So when do you think
right?
it's going to happen?
Well, I
I mean, it's I,
yeah,
uh,
it's a foregone conclusion.
it
I
is.
mean, but a friend of mine, he's stuck in Hawaii. I know, a good place to be stuck because
Yeah, I
You know
read
that.
that. Always work night shifts so you can maximize your beach time. Right?
Exactly, because the DOD's
Yeah.
stop loss movement order, whatever. But he said he had to go to the Ala Moana Mall, which is the big mall there in Honolulu,
Okay.
to get something or other. And they were having the people out there little, COVID-19 checkpoints before you could go into the mall. And they had people there doing that little temperature gig
Yep.
thing. And he said, I am writing, he put this on, he wrote this on a social media site. He says, I'm writing you this as a dead man because according to this COVID-19 checkpoint temperature sensor operator, my temperature is 91.6. Well, and
Well,
yeah,
yeah, that doesn't.
yeah, no, it's not like 98 something or other,
Yeah.
So he says, I am a corpse, so these people, these people have no training. They don't have.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Well, I
the
mean,
thing is calibrated or what.
my mom has said my mom's a she's an RN. She still works as an RN, and her and my dad, they both they I we would assume they what's the word they got the virus. I guess I feel like got is not the right word, but they got it when they went on a trip to Arizona last month, and they came back, and they're fine now. They got cleared. They did their self quarantine and all that because that's the only treatment you can really do. But what my mom was saying, and she's had this theory since March when all this started, is that what do we really attribute this to? Because there's going to be all these people who have, they're either asymptomatic or they get
Hmm.
a very serious reaction, or they're just, my mom's 65, my dad's 71, he's had chronic asthma his entire life, he's had a history of pneumonia, they're fine. But
Yeah,
then there's other people who are, my age and younger who have these very serious reactions. And I don't have an answer. I'm just saying that maybe shutting down the world is not the best reaction to something.
pretty much no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I mean, look, we're humans. We've been doing this shit for thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of years, and we're all right. We're
yeah,
hit.
and I think there's a lot to be said for gaining herd immunity, and
Yes.
I'm sorry to say for those people who do get
Well, I
sick,
mean,
they'll,
yeah. But
but there's the herd will be culled.
exactly, and that's why, like, I caught a ton of flack from this shit on Twitter by saying, if anyone should have died, it was my dad, and I said that word for word because
I remember.
yeah, I meant it, and I got, oh my god, you're a bad human being. I'm like, no, my father is the epitome of a pre-existing condition.
He's all the risk groups.
Exactly, 71, multiple heart attacks, asthma since the day he was born, and almost died as a 2-year-old. History of pneumonia, and guess what? The common denominator for him being a survivor is the fact that he's just too fucking stubborn to die. Is
Yeah,
probably what it is. But he's fine. You know,
yeah.
he was tired at the end of the day. He had a cough, and yeah, it was like being sick. He gets that literally every quarter. That's not
If
new.
if you go the whole thing with the psychology of, oh my God, I'm sick, I'm never gonna recover. Well, mental health and positive attitude is a big part of that.
And my mom has always been huge on that with us as a 65-year-old, who's been a nurse since 1976. Look, you will suffer what you believe you will suffer, as far as
Right.
we were always told. And I really believe it. Your mental makeup will define how you respond to anything, whether
Exactly.
it's sickness or it's you going through some shit as a personal life or whatever it is. Whatever you think's going to happen to you probably will.
Self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah. Um, Ron, honestly, like I said, man, I would love to. I don't, again, I put this out. I'm not trying to replace anybody. I'm not trying to do anything that wasn't already done. Um, but I would like to get more of, now that we've established who you are, I feel like you have a great insight and can react in a very unique way that most people can't, based on just life experience and things you've gone through. Um, there was one last question I have for you, if you got a few minutes for it.
Sure. Go
What
ahead.
what the fuck do you think is going to happen in November?
I think the post office will lose all the mail-in ballots because they can't deliver shit. Yeah. I could give you the simple answer, but I can't. Um,
You might be
I,
right.
I, I'm just waiting for the one of the three debates when Biden gets out there and starts wandering aimlessly about the stage and his shirt tail untucked uh, I mean, you watch the guy. I mean, my mom had dementia before she passed,
Yeah.
or and I
We
think we've
mock
all.
it, but it's very real.
It's very real, and it's tragic to see. I mean, whatever you think of the guy's history and past and what all is, it's just you know the way his wife sort of handles him and pushes him. Her ambitions to be the first lady. These unknown handlers around him that are protecting him, feeding him lines, and he can't even read the frickin' teleprompter properly. And so it's like, yeah, yeah. But this is the horse they picked to ride out of the barn, and
Absolutely.
so yeah, I wish him luck. And I love the way the opposition keeps saying, you know, this is it. Trump's over. It's done with. Look at him. He's disheartened. He's disheveled. He's 10 points down in the polls. Blah blah. Blah. I go, I are you going to believe me or are you going to believe your lying eyes? Type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So
But that's also when I come back to Mr. Biden, it's like he still hasn't announced who his running mate is. And it's
well,
July. We're in July. And I think that's
yeah.
what's going to really decide it for him. And I hate to say it, but I don't
Well,
think he's going to pick someone who's going to be a unifying candidate.
no, and
If he did, that might work in his favor because I feel like everyone's kind of voting based on that and not necessarily him.
but I don't think because that person. Think about this. You're going to be the nominee, the presidential nominee. Your first big decision is who's going to be your running mate.
Right.
I mean, that sort of sets the tone for how you're approaching the way you're going to govern, your vision for the future, your administration, that sort of thing. I mean, you can go back and look at some of the selections that people had done, and you go like, well, I can see why they picked it for domestic political reasons, regional balance, what all,
Well, I definitely couldn't, and I don't think
but
anybody could say why did Hillary pick Tim Kaine in 2016? Like,
uh,
that came out of nowhere, in my
he's
opinion.
some Tim Kaine is not the brightest guy in the round. I mean,
No, he was
yeah.
but and then conversely, what did Trump do? He picked Mike
he,
Pence,
he
who
was
was
but
actually the adult in the room at all
he's an
times.
experienced politician, knows
Now, people
Washington,
may
and
not agree with a lot of the shit he says, but he's a fucking adult, and he comes across and sounds like an adult, and he was a solid selection. So when you
yeah.
had, but you know
I
what, you
mean,
go back to that, Ron, and I feel bad because I mean, I still talk about this with some of my friends who are in the political reporting world, and I remember what Joe Biden did to Paul Ryan in that VB debate. Like that was brutal. Like Paul Ryan, you know what, Ron? I hate to say this, but you know what it would be like is if someone came on and decided to moderate an intelligence debate between you and I. I'm Paul Ryan, and you would be Biden, and that's how that debate as a VP looked on TV. It like Paul Ryan didn't look like he needed to be there, and Biden just looked like the seasoned pro. But that was also 8 years ago when the man was
right,
mentally healthy, and he's not
right.
anymore.
Well, if I get to be Biden, do I get little girls too?
Oh man, well,
Sorry,
uh,
edit that stuff out. You edit that shit out.
I don't know. I don't know if I can. Okay, I will. I'll try. Wow. Well, that's a good way to end it.
Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
going to jail now for
Yeah,
pedophilia.
I mean, fuck it. Look, we're throwing it up there. I'm with you, and I am in no. Well, I have never been in fear of whoever the fuck's going to try and tear it down. It is what it is. We fight this fight together, and we go forward.
Right.
But no, honestly, man, I really appreciate everything you've done. And I really appreciate you giving me your time tonight where we're going on almost 2 hours. I am going to upload. I'm going to do the first part. I'll edit out that little spot where you froze and you were like,
You froze too, dude.
I know. So I'll edit that out, but then I'll throw this up as a second part. And I'll post them up as two different parts because,
Sure.
I mean,
And I'll be happy to be your guest anytime you need me.
Yeah, man. Like, I really do appreciate it. And I would love to, I know we've established who you are, but I think we would get more benefit and value going forward, trying to continue with this,
You just want live sarcastic comments instead of reading them on Twitter. I got it.
really all the fuck I want, Ron. But yeah, I mean, without getting into our brother Nick, who I wanted to talk about with him, I don't know what he's going to do with the podcast. I know
Yeah.
hopefully he keeps it up. I mean, it's still there. But without him doing his thing, he's talked about coming on with me, and I would love that. But going forward, I want to get actual ongoing discussion. I don't want this to be the only time anybody sees you, because I think you bring a huge value, and I think people can learn a lot from you and your experience. And
Thank you.
primarily what I want, and I want the fucking idiots who unfortunately are way younger than us, who think they've got the world figured out, because I was one of them at one time. And I want them to actually learn from someone who's lived in it, experienced it, worked in it, and operated in it, to kind of show you that, hey, let's think about what the fuck we're doing here. And that's where I think you come in. So
Thank you. Yeah.
absolutely, man.
Cool. There'll be a test tomorrow. Study.
I sure hope so. I got a few. Look, I wrote some notes down on your bio. I'm gonna send that out. We'll get a few. We'll get a Google Doc test going up, maybe multiple choice. But if you guys don't know where Ron entered Air Force MEPS at, I remember. Hopefully you do, because that's gonna be the first fucking question. Ron, I appreciate you, man. I love you, brother. I hope to see
See you, bro.
Thanks, man.